Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining our monthly Hunger, Nutrition, and Health Action Collaborative webinar. I'm Rachel Forensic with the CDC Foundation. The Zoom chat is now open, so please feel free to introduce yourself. We like to know who's with us today. Many of you have asked for the chat to be open during the webinar so that you can share resources and connect. So we'll keep it open now. We'll close it during the conversation with our guest today, and then we'll open it up during the question and answer segment. Also, please, just as a reminder, please don't post any political commentary or sell any products. At any time during the webinar, you can submit your questions to the panel using the Q&A feature. And if you missed our November webinar on collecting food security data with our colleagues from Children's Health Watch, you can view that recording now on our website at impacthunger.org. So let's take a moment and find out what types of organizations are with us today. So we're going to have a quick poll come up, and if you'll fill that out, we'll give you about, 20 seconds to fill that out. So thanks for posting that. Tell us what type of organization you represent. Okay, we can probably pull that down and we'll see who's here with us today. Lots of nonprofits, as usual. Great to see you all. Great to see some philanthropy, academic universities, local government, state government. Great to see you all. Okay, so let's dive in. Today's topic is about institutional and local food purchasing as powerful levers in transforming our food system and improving community health. We have two dynamic leaders with us from local and national organizations that I really can't wait for you to meet. Retzaaza is a certified B Corp and social enterprise that's building a more just local food system across Georgia by making fresh local food more affordable and accessible. Their hyperlocal model supports small and mid-sized farmers and delivers high-quality produce to families experiencing food insecurity in both urban and rural communities. The Center for Good Food Purchasing is a national nonprofit organization that's transforming how public institutions buy food so that every dollar spent advances a more transparent, equitable, and sustainable food system. The Good Food Purchasing Program helps schools, cities, and other institutions align their food budgets with core values such as local economies, health, a valued workforce, animal welfare, and environmental sustainability. Their tools and support have already shifted more than $1.1 billion in food spend and over 450 million meals towards food that is better for people, communities, and our planet. So today I have with me two entrepreneurs, Kashi Sehgal, founder and CEO of Retzaaza, and Alexa Delwiche, co-founder and executive director of the Center for Good Food Purchasing. Welcome, Kashi and Alexa. I'm so glad to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Great. So Kashi, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
You started Retzaaza during the pandemic. I'm sure the group would love to know a little bit about Retzaaza and what gap did you see in the food system at that time, and what barriers still prevent equitable participation by small and mid-sized farmers?
So there are a lot of things that I think are barriers, but I'll pick the few that really made us start as a company. So if you all remember, farmers were throwing out produce by the record tons of pounds during the pandemic, and news was running headlines of this, and Also, our neighbors that were lined up at food banks in record numbers. And I couldn't understand watching these two stories run side by side. It felt like a logistics problem because it felt like we had enough food. So I just simply asked why we're throwing out food when people could really use it. And I did not realize it would lead to a company, but at some point I talked to too many farmers and food banks and people that are involved in local food systems. And I realized that there were these holes. People were doing great work, but not necessarily working together, which I think is a story for a lot of industries. And so there was a reason for an entity to come in and help coordinate these local food resources. So Retzaaza is air traffic control for resources around that local food ecosystem, and we are buying from local farmers and we pay them fairly. What we found out was that farmers don't get paid, they don't get contracts. It's hard for them to land these bigger institutional contracts. And so by working with us, we make it much easier for institutions to buy locally because we can aggregate so much of it. So we're like a food hub and a distributor and all of those things wrapped up into one.
Fantastic. Just to follow up on that, Kashi, are there any policy interventions that you feel like would help level the playing field for smaller and mid-size farmers to get into this?
I think there's a lot of policy that could help. I think we don't have enough time to scratch that surface even. But um, one of the policy levers that existed and now has gone away, LFPA, which I think people on the call are
Mhm.
probably familiar with, that was a program that was set up for local food banks and real institutional buying. And that was something that was supposed to help our farmers produce more and sell more. What it didn't do was create the muscle building power for these larger institutions. It just paid for the food and it didn't expect the customers to figure out how to pay for that food over time without the grant funding. And so when
Mhm.
that program went away, it was always going to be a problem. And so, we're a for-profit company. Retzaaza is a for-profit company. We want to build a circular system all the way around from the sustainability of it, but also the financials so that we can continue to help and buy from our farmers and then continue to help our food insecure. That's the other part of our business. Because we can buy from farmers and sell their product, we can turn that around and actually make produce super cheap and affordable for our neighbors who really need it. If we could put in place policy that really helps these larger institutions, maybe it's 100% paid for, the product is paid for to help the farmers grow, to help build process and SOPs with these larger institutions. And then over time, maybe it's an 80-20, and then a 60-40, and then a 50-50.
Mhm.
But at that point, you're helping these institutions become permanent customers, not just customers during a program.
Yeah,
So I think that's one thing that we could do.
it's a great point. I know you could probably say a lot more, but that's a really great point. And that leads us into some deeper conversation with you, Alexa. Um, Food purchasing can be a powerful lever in improving our food system. What made you start the Center for Good Food Purchasing, and how can institutional purchasing move beyond being a transactional process to serve as a transformative and high leverage force for community health and equity?
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us, Rachel. And I love that idea of like building the muscle memory of the institutions. And I think that's what we're trying to get at with the work we're doing at the center and with many partners all over the country. And shout out to Food Forward. I saw you in the chat. That's an organization we worked with many years ago when we were first building the Los Angeles Food Policy Council, which then was the initial house of the Good Food Purchasing Program, now housed at the center. But essentially, the idea is that institutional purchasing becomes transformative really when we can look beyond treating food procurement as simply a way to buy food at the lowest cost and start seeing it as a powerful public policy tool. We know that food service institutions like school districts, hospitals, universities, carceral facilities, they're spending roughly $120 billion a year on food. And even though that's only about 7% of our total food spending in the US, the beauty of it is the institutions buy at scale. So that gives them outsized influence. And when schools and hospitals, city agencies are able to move together, they can send a clear market signal to suppliers about what a community values, whether it's fair labor practices, prices for farmers, environmental sustainability, serving culturally relevant, nutritious food, high standards for farm animals, et cetera. That's when we can begin making those shifts. So the Center for Good Food Purchasing focuses primarily on public institutions because we believe that taxpayer dollars can be used for the public good and generate public benefit, or at the very least, minimize harm. And when those public dollars are aligned with a community's values, that's when we begin seeing ripple effects that go well beyond the meal being served. So at the center, what we do is we help institutions operationalize that framework because it's, a great idea in theory, and then in practice, it is quite complicated. So we support them by adopting shared values through that good food purchasing framework, provide technical assistance to help increase their purchases of food that reflect these values. And then I think the most important part is really aggregating that demand in ways that can actually shift markets. And just the last point I'll make is, as important as that work with the institutions is the bridge building between food service operators, community organizations, policymakers, value chain producers, national partners, because if we're trying to change a food system, it really requires a whole ecosystem of players, both at the community level, networked across communities, and at the national level. So transformation happens when purchasing decisions are connected to community priorities and the idea around long-term systems change.
Fantastic. That's great. Kashi, say a little bit about how local purchasing models can redistribute power within the food system, especially towards farmers, producers of color, or small distributors.
So, what I learned on my road tour, road show that I went on before I started the company was that farmers are not always paid for the contracts that they have in place. It's very easy for a retailer to just not buy when they've ordered something. We are rescuing truckloads of product from some of our farmers, and so um, it's just unfortunate. And we expect our farmers to do so much, and yet they don't have any guarantee that they're going to get paid for the work that they've done. That just feels unfair, and like so many other words. So, I think when a farmer can put an actual dollar in their pocket, one that they weren't expecting, especially from the food that they can't sell, and we're helping them find those markets for the food that may go unsold. Um, I think when they have more spending power, purchasing power, ability to pay their staff, ability to do for their business like any of our businesses would like to do, I think that's just helpful. It allows them to make decisions that are not necessarily rooted in, I have to do this, but maybe I have some flexibility in decision making. And we want to bring that to these small business owners who really are providing for this entire country, right? Or planet, right? I mean, farmers across the globe are really the backbone. So, um, we really believe that dollars are important. And so they speak very loudly.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Alexa, I know that data is an important foundation and I think even starting point for the work that you do with the organizations, institutions that you help support. Can you say a little bit about how technology and data transparency can help bridge the gap between institutional demand and local supply?
Sure. Yes. So transparency is really what turns values into that accountability mechanism. And for governments and public institutions that have made commitments to values aligned purchasing and are fully on board and want to do it, data transparency is really the only way, like individuals, to know whether those commitments are actually being fulfilled. So, and also to show constituents how their public dollars are being spent. And without that transparent, high quality data, the food system's true costs and impacts continue to remain hidden. So collecting detailed purchasing and supply chain data is really what allows us to first identify gaps, uncover opportunities for increasing local and values aligned producers, and design policies and practices that can actually respond to what we're seeing and hearing and the real conditions on the ground. It's also how we can begin to scale impact. So using aggregate data to look at common barriers across a wide variety of food service institutions that can uplift strategies that influence not just one institution, but entire networks of public food service operations. And at the same time, that supply chain transparency is really hard because our food system is incredibly opaque, and institutions everywhere struggle with limited visibility into like what the current state is and really fragmented data. So um, at the center, we have a team of analysts who partner with the institutions we work with to collect and analyze purchasing data with really, it's a level of granularity and transparency that's quite rare. And but it frees up the institutions to be able to focus on what they need to focus on, serving their constituents and the public, and we can offset some of that really like complicated data work and do that. So I think that tech technology can play a really important role here to make that data transparency more efficient and effective. It's not there yet, but there's a big opportunity. And then with that transparency, it really helps bridge that institutional demand with supply and begins to align markets with the community values. And that's what it's when we get to scale is when we can make good food more available, more affordable.
Great. Kashi, what lessons can we learn from successful public-private partnerships in scaling equitable food pathways across regions?
A lot of the work that we do at Retzaaza is mostly through public-private partnerships. We've partnered at the county level, at the city level here in Atlanta. And we operate a lot of our food access work in direct partnership with counties and cities and other municipalities. When we are able to do that food access work, we are only using local food at those markets as donations to nonprofits. So we are able to do more to support our farms and local growers, local producers in and around the state. So, it's a way to create impact, larger impact very quickly, because you can pull different levers, right? The government has, sometimes it feels like an endless supply of dollars. And so they have the resources, we have the capabilities, and really bringing them around, helping them understand what we do. We have them come out, our partners, they come to markets. They have a very good understanding of who we are and what we do as an organization so that when things happen, like what happened in November with SNAP, we were able to spin up a public-private partnership with one of the largest counties in the state because we'd done that pre-work of relationship building with some of our entities in and around Atlanta. So, I don't think, you wait until you need something. I think it's constant relationship building with our community partners, with our municipalities, with our elected officials, and we keep them very well in the loop.
Very important.
Yeah.
Alexa, can you, going back to some of the data and metrics, what metrics should institutions use to measure whether local food purchasing is truly transforming their food system or if it's merely shifting the dollars around?
Yeah, so at the center, when we're talking about good food, we're talking about food purchasing that advances a whole set of values. So starts with equity, accountability, transparency. Those are the foundation, and from there we look at five additional value areas of local and community-based economies, environmental sustainability, valued workforce, animal welfare, community health, and nutrition. So the way that we do that, and we've set metrics and targets related to all of those values, is through our good food purchasing standards. And we update them every 5 years through a really extensive multi-stakeholder process, but that's what helps operationalize what we mean by good food. So for each of those value categories, there's some measurable criteria and targets, and that allows institutions to begin assessing their purchasing across this whole range, set goals for where they want to be over, a 5 or 10 year period of time, and track progress. And I think the important note that to make here is that institutional procurement it's definitely a journey. It's not a 1 year fix that's going to happen overnight because of the endless barriers that are constraints that government is under when it comes to procurement, like Kashi was alluding to. Um, so I think the good news is, though, when you begin to set those targets with intention and you look at the food system in a really holistic frame, is that even when you're making small percentage shifts, it can actually represent a pretty massive impact when you're operating at that institutional scale.
Yeah, sounds like it definitely would. Um, I want to encourage folks to put any questions in the Q&A. We have a couple that have popped up I'm going to ask you, but I am curious if is there anything that you might recommend for our audience today that they can do after this kind of call? Like, how can they be involved in helping to have this, kind of transformation happening, in their own communities? They're not necessarily purchasing food. They're not part of big institutions, but you were talking, Alexa, about community values. How do those, how do people start making their voices heard so these shifts can happen? Oh, Alexa, you're on mute.
Sorry. Someone
Okay.
had to do that, right?
Right, exactly.
I love food policy councils, and whatever the format is in your individual community, in terms of it's creating a space where that brings together a lot of different organizations across sectors and issue areas, and that is a lot of food policy councils or multi-sector grassroots coalitions are working on different policy, big policy opportunities that are pretty inclusive and open to people from the community getting involved and helping to shape and move those policies. Some are focused on institutional procurement, but there's a whole range of policy opportunities. So I think it's a great way to meet people too, and get networked and plugged into what the food policy opportunities exist in your community.
Yeah.
Shout out to food policy councils. Kashi, how about you?
Yeah, food policy councils are really important, and I wish that Atlanta had one, and we're working on it, I think. But um, I would echo what she said and also ask for local food. Just when you are in places, if there are comment cards, people are asking for your feedback, you're at the hospital, you're at your school, you're wherever you are, ask ask the institution where are they getting their food? Is this local? The more that consumers we all consume food on a daily basis, we're buying it, we're getting it in public spaces, be more conscious about it and ask questions and provide feedback to the people that are actually making those purchases. As someone who provides local food as a distributor, it is hard for us to get through some of these channels into the hospitals and schools. But if they hear that their constituents, their stakeholders really want it, that makes it easier for us to buy and sell more local food into these institutions.
Great. We have a couple questions that have come up. One is there work that any of you are doing with organizations like Meals on Wheels, school meals, or after school programs? I know, Alexa, you're working with, my understanding is with school districts and their purchasing. I'm not sure how much smaller you get with the organizations that you help support in their purchasing, but I was curious about either of you working with organizations like that.
We have gotten into medically tailored meals and mixed produce boxes, nutrition boxes. So we do a lot of produce box packing at our warehouse and support a lot of those medically tailored meal programs in Atlanta. So definitely getting in more to the food as medicine movement. And obviously there's a way that you can buy locally for all of that. So we're finding more ways to use local food.
Great.
Yeah, and we work with a whole range of institutions, and when it comes to Meals on Wheels, or we'll work more with the Department of Aging, and so it's sort of a more centralized upstream focus, and acknowledging that they are, well networked within their community. So yeah, but it's hospitals, school districts, city and county departments and agencies,
Great.
and
Yeah, and it sounds like it does get down to some community, smaller groups like that. Kashi, there's a question about when you might be expanding beyond Georgia. I think you're only in Georgia now, but are you looking at serving any other states? And our participant asked specifically about Montana.
Montana. Oh, I love Montana so much. It's beautiful up there. Um, I would love to expand to Montana. It would give me a reason to go. But we are expanding. Actually, we're sending our first truck of produce to upstate New York in the next couple of weeks. From a sustainability standpoint, I don't know if I love that because that doesn't quite feel local to me, but also they can't grow citrus up there. So Georgia is now a citrus state, so we can feed that need. But we are really evaluating where we go next. There's absolutely plans to expand. I think the last 4.5, 5 years, we've really tried to figure out what it looks like to do this here in Georgia. And we are blessed in Georgia to have a growing season that lasts all year round. So, how do we do this in places that maybe have more limited growing seasons? And what does that look like? So, I think we will be branching out into the Carolinas for sure, going down into Florida, but we're looking at LA, we're looking at New York. Maybe we should put Montana on the list. Please reach out to me. We really have to play matchmaker between the farmers and demand for that local food, whether it's an institution, can we get into the school network? Where are we going to actually sell that food and have this be a consistent source of revenue for our farmers? So we also don't want to start and stop a program. So we just have to make sure all the pieces are in place to actually do that local matchmaking.
Great. Well, like usual, the 30 minutes flies by and we have 1 minute left. One of the things we like to ask our audience is we like to ask them if there's one thing that they're going to do this week because of what they learned today. So we value that. We love to hear that in the chats. I do have someone, Kashi, that maybe we can figure out a way to connect because they'd love to hear more about how you're connecting farmers to the medically tailored meals programs in Georgia. So
Yeah.
we can help make that kind of connection. But it is 4 o'clock, and I really want to thank you both for being on here today. It's fantastic what you're doing. It's complex, and it's really important, and I'm really grateful for what you all are doing. So thank you for joining me today for this conversation. Want to also remind folks to join us on Wednesday, January 21st for the beginning of our 2026 webinar series. And I'd really also like to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season. We'll be back in 2026, and we'd very much appreciate the gift of your feedback. So a survey will pop up when you leave the meeting, and if you would take a moment to let us know about your experience today, but also what other types of conversations you'd like to see and hear during the coming year. So again, Alexa and Kashi, thank you so much for joining me today, and want to wish everyone a happy holiday season.
Thanks, Rachel.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.